When it comes to winning the Heisman so far this season, it's been all about Bryce Young with Alabama until now. Ole Miss's Matt Corral, who, according to our producer Noah, has been torching defenses, now the co-favorite to win with Young at plus 225 odds. So he opened up as the 9th favorite with 20-1 odds in the preseason. Taking a look at the current odds, there's a big drop-off after Young and Corral. Spencer Rattler with Oklahoma coming in third, 15-1 odds, followed by C.J. Stroud there, and then the list moves on. Let's welcome the host of the Cover 3 podcast, Chip Patterson. So Matt Corral, the co-favorite. So far, everybody has been on the Bryce Young bandwagon. So what do you think of him now as the co-favorite?
He's got a great opportunity in what I am declaring as the Johnny Manziel path to a Heisman Trophy, because when Johnny Manziel won the Heisman Trophy, Texas A&M wasn't competing for a national championship. He put out outrageous numbers and he beat Alabama. And so that's where we just go ahead and we circle that Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin matchup between Ole Miss and Alabama. And you look at Matt Corral, someone who's coming off of 7 touchdowns against Tulane this past weekend, leading a Rebels offense that totaled 700 yards of offense. And you think that if he can simply just beat Alabama and continue to put up crazy numbers, then there is a path to the Heisman Trophy for Matt Corral. The thing that is really interesting here is to go back to that Johnny Manziel year. The final score of Texas A&M's win was 29-24. The numbers were not outrageous. And in the same way, Matt Corral doesn't need to have 400 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns against Alabama. There's only one number that counts, and it is the final score, making sure that Ole Miss wins. So if you beat Alabama, you continue to put some distance between yourself and Bryce Young, and you make Ole Miss a top 15 team right now in the driver's seat in the SEC West.
That matchup with Alabama just around the corner on October 2nd. What about Spencer Rattler? He was preseason favorite to win the Heisman. I will let you know that last Oklahoma game, I was sitting in a hotel room, basically just like tearing apart little pieces of tissue because it was very, very stressful. Would you put a value bet on him at plus 1,500?
No, absolutely not. He is not the most important part of Oklahoma succeeding. And Amanda, and I know your entire Saturday was very stressful. You did a fantastic job. But the twists and turns that this Oklahoma season and the many narratives have taken, it's fascinating. Because if you look at the heat maps and if you look at the play calling, where Spencer Rattler is passing the ball does not suggest that he is going to be tearing up defenses the same way that Kyler Murray did. In fact, it's a little bit closer to the usage that we saw from Jalen Hurts. And in the same way, I think we've seen Oklahoma lean on the ground game. Like Oklahoma, while we think about everything we know about Lincoln Riley, everything we know about the air raid offense, and yes, the wide receiver skill position talent is there, but as this offense functions, it's a little bit better when it comes to leaning on the ground game and letting that Oklahoma defense, which is given up obviously a lot of yards to Tulane in a much closer than expected game. I still think that this Oklahoma defense is a real difference-making unit. I think that Oklahoma defense really helped Oklahoma win that game against Nebraska. And so I think that Spencer Rattler as the superstar out there in front, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield type, I just don't think that's who he is in the 2021 Oklahoma offense.
Now, Chip, when it comes to the Big 12, I will say going into this, I do remember you said Texas was vastly underrated. Coming into this season, Oklahoma starting to pull away as the heavy favorite to win yet another Big 12 championship. What do you think about the Sooners' odds for that?
I think that you might as well snap it up now. It's so funny that everyone is selling all the Oklahoma stock. They're dropping in the rankings even though they win. And you know what the odds makers are doing? They're just moving it closer towards the inevitability that seems to be every year in the Big 12, which is Oklahoma winning the conference championship. Iowa State, not only in its loss to Iowa, but with just the way that it's played so far this year, I think that there's much less confidence that they are going to be able to take a run at the Sooners. And Texas in its loss against Arkansas, showing that it still has some ways to go. Again, like this Oklahoma team is really solid. It's not flashy. It's not finesse. It doesn't need to go out there and score 50 points to win. It's just a well-rounded football team in a way that I think our expectations are not always tied to Oklahoma. And that just puts them so much further ahead of the rest of that conference when, again, Iowa State has not played up to expectations. Brock Purdy, I think, being the limiting factor there. Texas still has to get its new quarterback ironed in and get things settled down defensively, especially after not being able to get stops against Arkansas. Like, I just continue to look at the rest of the conference and see flaws. And if the only complaint I have about Oklahoma is that its offense just isn't clicking in the way that my little video game brain wants it to, well, then things are pretty good for the Sooners.
What about in the Big Ten? That's a little bit more interesting, to say the least. Penn State gaining on Ohio State in odds to win. Ohio State now minus 160, Penn State plus 500.
Yeah, you got to think that some of the Penn State love is going to be a little bit from the casuals and the normies that just saw an incredible atmosphere in Happy Valley. And I do think that Sean Clifford specifically has answered some of my concerns about Penn State's ability to keep up. In fact, if we're just going on the performances so far, Sean Clifford may have seemed more impressive in that one game. C.J. Stroud still has put together a whole bunch of yards in a way that we have not seen really from the Nittany Lions. I also would look to Michigan there in the Big Ten East. I would also look to Iowa. We've got all these teams that are really exceeding expectations where it was Ohio State and everyone else. In the Big 12, it still is Oklahoma and everyone else. The picture is much cloudier right now and much more interesting because those division wins are not W's. And if you do get to the Big Ten championship game against Iowa, that is no longer the same kind of proposition as 2 out of the last 3 years when Ohio State shows up to play Northwestern. And much love to Pat Fitzgerald, but it's just a little bit different of a math equation when you're talking about a potentially undefeated Iowa team.
Chip, how do you feel about Clemson? Because we see them slipping in the AP poll. They're 9th right now. They opened up the season at 3rd. But according to Caesars Sportsbook, they're still the 3rd favorite behind Alabama and Georgia to go ahead and win the Natty with 10-1 odds. What do you think about Clemson's journey here?
I think it's all about path. One of the toughest games remaining on the schedule is this weekend against NC State in Raleigh, a very good and experienced Wolfpack team. But if Clemson can get out of that game without taking a loss, I don't think they're going to take another loss before the ACC championship game at a very minimum. I think that this offense is starting to realize its limitations in ways that they didn't have last year. Not just Trevor Lawrence, but the play of someone like Travis Etienne, who was a 4-year star for the Clemson Tigers. He did so much to bail them out of difficult situations. They're trying to find how they're going to distribute the ball to all those different skill position players. And you hear all of the talk from the Clemson offensive staff. They know that this is a work in progress. I think for DJ Uiagalelei, he has so much room to grow from where we think he can be just based on what he's already shown us at Notre Dame last year, against Boston College last year. And so I think that getting better play at the quarterback position, starting to figure out how you get out of those difficult 3rd down situations when things break down, who is DJ looking to, all these things are okay problems to have when you've got a top 5 defense in the entire country. That defense wants to dominate. They want to hold everybody to like 10 points or less. I mean, Georgia's offense didn't score a touchdown on the Tigers. It was only that pick 6, the only touchdown in the game. The reason why the odds makers still have this set for Clemson is because Clemson will be still with only 1 loss, at least on Conference Championship Saturday.
Chip, the last topic here is your pick to win the national championship a quarter into the season. According to my notes, you have Ohio State here. Now, is this a value pick, or are you really going with the Buckeyes to win the whole thing?
I think this is as good of a price you will get on Ohio State, given all of the attention that has been given to Penn State, has been given to Michigan, and Ohio State's own struggles. If you believe that Ryan Day can get this thing ironed out, and if he can get the defense solidified, then you still have a team that can go and win a national championship. Ryan Day has not been challenged like this in his young head coaching career. He walked into one of the best jobs. He got handed the keys to the Cadillac and said, "Hey, kid, don't crash the car." This is the first time that the steering wheel is getting a little shaky, and I'm fascinated to see what happens. My bet here with Ohio State is that Ryan Day proves in this sort of personnel management situation, in this management in general of the roster situation, he proves to be as good at that as he has been so far at winning Big Ten games and winning games in general. And that if he's able to rise to the challenge as a head coach, then that will lead Ohio State to finishing this season as Big Ten champions and showing up in the college football playoff with one of the best offenses in the entire country. I would go back to Lincoln Riley and the tough decisions that he had to make about his own defense early in his head coaching career. How do you fire the brother of the person who gave you one of the best jobs in college football? Ryan Day has his own Lincoln Riley moment right now. My bet on Ohio State is that it has similar results.
And just looking at their schedule, Akron, Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, finally Penn State there on October 30th. Chip Patterson, thank you so much for checking in with us, the host of the Cover 3 podcast, the one and only Chip Patterson. Make sure to download and follow to hear much more from him.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.